Hit record. All right. So first of all, welcome. Thank you, everyone. Welcome to the South Hadley Library, friends. Welcome all to the Saffell Author Talk on My Splendor. I am Desiree Smelser. I go by Desi. I am the Adult Services Librarian at the South Hadley Public Library. And I have a few housekeeping issues to attend to. For those of you who would like to ask questions, remember that there is a chat box at the very bottom of your screen. Please use that to ask the questions, which we will ask after all the Q&A comes through, that I'll be asking Jack. And I also ask that you keep what you have been doing, which I appreciate, keeping your video and audio off for now. And it just helps with the flow of the program. Also, like I said before, I want to mention next Saturday, we have another fun author program on Saturday, October 31st at 11 o'clock on Zoom, a celebration of animation presentation, and it's the 100 greatest characters of all time. Award-winning author and pop culture historian Martin Gitlin hosts this fun, nostalgic, and enlightening presentation based on his book. He's the only author to actually rank all the greatest cartoon characters ever, and such as Popeye, Bugs Bunny, Mickey Mouse, Scooby-Doo, Snoopy, SpongeBob SquarePants. He'll show funny cartoon snippets of the characters of the past century, play trivia with his patrons, discuss the criteria he used to rank the best of the best, and speak about their impact on American pop culture. Now, let's get to meeting author who wrote a heartwarming and emotional story about his wife, Danielle Saffell. Jack Saffell is a daily communicant, consulting rosarian, a master gardener. He lives in beautiful Northern California and among the giant redwoods, and he's married to 40 years to a beautiful deaf woman. His favorite hobby is cooking for all of those he loves. Please welcome Jack Saffell. Thank you, Jack. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
You're welcome. So when did you first realize you wanted to be a writer?
When I was in college, I went to junior college, our local junior college, and I took rudimentary English because my high school course of study in the Los Angeles school system was not the best. So I had to start with bonehead English to learn punctuation and grammar. And then I had to take reading and composition. In reading and composition, I felt I can make people feel. And that was my goal. That's still my goal.
That's still your goal. What's your favorite childhood book?
Island of the Blue Dolphins was a phenomenal book for me to read. And it piqued my interest in reading.
Okay. Well, how old were you when you read that?
9 or 10.
9 or 10?
Shortly after that book, I went on to read the Drum Mandingo. It's kind of an adult series on plantation owners and slavery, and it enlightened me as a young man on how we're not to treat others and to treat them, we're all the same. Mm-hmm. Under the skin, we're all the same.
Mm-hmm. Okay, makes sense. As a child, what did you want to do for when you grew up?
I actually wanted to be an obstetrician. Okay. I enjoy babies, still enjoy babies. When Danielle had our kids, I was very involved, and I think I could have done it, but I had to stand aside, let the doctor do it.
Okay. So what age, how early were you when you realized that language had power?
This might be a strange thing to bring up right now, but my mom is Mexican. She's very dark skinned. They call it in Spanish morena, or mucho morena, very dark. And Andrew turned out white like my dad. He's Irish. So my Mexican grandparents were very good at arguing. And my grandmother would have a big sartén, which is a big black frying pan. And she'd go after my grandfather, and he'd turn and he'd call her everything. And the dialogue was so very, very, it scared me immensely, but it was so poetic. He'd say something and she'd reply, and then he'd say something about her mom, and she'd say la tuya, which almost sounds like a song, and it means your mom. And just, I knew then that words could grab you.
Okay. Okay. If you had to do something as a child, if you could do something as a child or young adult that would help your writing now, what would you do? What would you have done?
Read more,
Mhm.
or the classics perhaps. I still love words. My dad was a wordsmith. When we had a question, I would have paid more attention to my English class teachers in high school.
For like composition or,
Yeah,
okay.
and word usage and structure and that stuff.
Okay. Okay. How long did it take for you? Now this is your first book. And like I said before, those of you who are in South Hadley or in Western Mass, you can order this book. Should be ready out of cataloging within the next week or so to be able to request. But how long did it take you to write your first book?
Are you talking about with doing my research and then writing?
Yes.
3 years.
3 years. So how long did the research take, and then how long did the actual writing take?
The research was complicated because mom was deaf. Yeah, my wife was deaf, and she went to school locally until she was 11, and then had to travel 250 miles to live at the California School for the Deaf at Berkeley. So I had to find out from Berkeley no longer exists. It's now in Fremont, California, the School for the Deaf. So I had to call them, and I talked with several people, but none had gone to Berkeley School, but one older person that was deaf worked there. So they asked him my questions. I did have the opportunity to tour the Berkeley campus when I was a young man. So then I had to research when Danielle was a little kid, and possibly the doctors that she would have seen. Went to the Historical Society, and they gave me a page out of the 1957 Humboldt County telephone book, and I actually utilized this as one of the characters in my story. Then I had to research a mean teacher that Danielle had, who was not shy in slapping them right across the face when they didn't understand. And she was very mean. And Danielle was not the only one who told me that. I had met 2 other students that had the same teacher, and they said the same thing about that teacher. So
That she was very cruel and physically
very cool.
cruel. Yeah.
My mother-in-law thought she might have been an alcoholic, but I never saw any of that in my research. She ended up retiring about 60 miles south of where I live, and she is apparently buried down there. So I read her obituary. And after all that research was done, it was just getting everything chronologically in order, because it is a life that I'm writing about. I am in the last 25 chapters, but there's 13 chapters, 12 chapters before I met Danielle. And I talked to her aunt and uncle who are still living. My mother-in-law was a great source of intimate stories, and my father-in-law, and Danielle's cousins, who are the same age, told me little tidbits about things that they had done together. For Danielle, communication was always non-existent. It was all manual. So anyway, year to research and 2 years at least to write it.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Would you say, did writing energize you, exhaust you? Obviously, this is about, losing your wife, but celebrating her life at the same time. So like I said, did it energize you, or did it exhaust you, or did it give you a sense of catharsis? Did you feel cathartic afterward? Was there a sense of relief? Do you feel that this was a way for you to grieve in a way?
Yes, very much so. When I had the idea to write Danielle's book, which was not my idea, my friend said, especially those who loved her, said, you need to write her story before you forget it. And it's true, I'm 66, and if I live another 40 years, in 20 years, it'll be different. But I sat down, and this book is the third attempt at trying to write Danielle's story. I have one version that I start with Danielle's mom, because the reason Danielle was deaf was because her mom had a blood transfusion early on in life that caused her to have strange antibodies, which in turn caused my wife to have a blood disorder when she was born, similar to Rh factor. But this was in 1956, and so she's still alive, but she lost her hearing due to that blood problem.
So like I said, to repeat my question, do you find that the writing energized or exhausted you?
Exhausted.
It did exhaust you, but you felt it would needed to be told.
I had, in Spanish, it's called ganas, desire. I had a desire to get this story done.
Okay.
For my children and for my grandchildren especially. And the last one, my grandchild, was not yet one when Danielle died. So in writing this story about their grandma, they will know their grandma.
Okay. What was the most difficult part of your artistic writing process?
Word phrasing is very difficult because I only have words to show you on paper what I am feeling or seeing.
Mm-hmm.
Danielle being deaf and later blind contributed immensely to my word usage and trying to be specific. In a trip we took to Hawaii, I tried to relay that in times where I was trying to describe to Danielle a beautiful tropical flower and how vivid the colors are and the oranges and reds blending and how just gorgeous it is. And Danielle would say time after time, I wish I could see.
Now, for those who don't know, she was deaf from 3 months old?
3 days old.
3 days old until she was how old when she became blind?
About 45.
Okay. And that was why? Why did she become blind?
Complications from diabetes we didn't know she had.
Okay. Okay. And so she was blind from the age of 45, and she died at the age of
59 and a half.
59 and a half. Okay. So, and you went to Hawaii during that time?
Yeah, on our 33rd wedding anniversary.
How did your communication with her change after she went blind?
It was a whole new language. Everything was, I had to touch her, I had to sign into her hand, but one little thing that was okay, when we'd go to sleep at night and she was only deaf, I'd always sleep on the left side of Danielle so I could finger spell into her hands, because when the lights are off, deaf people can't do sign language. So I could spell into Danielle's hands. And that was one little key in when she went blind on how we communicated. But there was a lot of times I'd have to touch. And one key point that I had to bring up in the story is our walking together when Danielle went blind, because I'm a quick, fast walker, and Danielle was a fast walker too. So she'd hold on to my elbow, but stairs were so daunting. Danielle would get to stairs, and I could just see the wind go out of her sails when I'd have her touch the stairs and say, "We have stairs." But when my brother gave me an idea how to tell her how many stairs there were, oh, made a world of difference. So that's in the book too.
Okay, okay. What would you say is your most interesting writing quirk?
I get up at 4:30 in the morning.
Okay.
Because I'd wake up with some amazing ideas that I had to write them down immediately, or otherwise I would lose them. There's a little part in the book where this was just a gift from God. It says the fact, let's see, it's something about trying to tell things to Danielle are greatly colored by the fact that she cannot see. Mm-hmm. So I'm actually using something that blind people would never use. Her perception is colored by the fact that she cannot see. And I said, I have to write that down.
Sure.
Because it tells everything.
Yeah, it makes sense. So how did you get your first book published?
I did research on how people, first of all, I heard from my daughter that The Martian, the book The Martian, was self-published. And I go, I can do that. So I did research on how that happened. It seemed very, very complicated. And I just started in square one. And number one would be finish your book. Because if you don't have something to publish, that's the hard part. And so then I just went through Amazon, and then they give you what they need. And then I self-published it. So I found a Christian publicist who gave me the template to write all this. And he just wanted a little blurb at the beginning of the book. So that was the easy part. But I wanted it a book that you could hold, read well. As an avid reader, I wanted it to be something simple and easy to tote.
But you also produced your own Audible book, correct?
I did produce my, I do like, after Danielle died, I lost my desire to read. Mm-hmm. Don't make me cry. Because that was all Danielle could do, is read. So I did my research on how to do an Audible book for the people who want to hear Danielle's story. And I am a lector in church, so reading is very natural to me. Would you like me to share some of the equipment I use for my Audible?
Yeah, that would be interesting to see.
I set it up. A lot of people don't know what it entails. But this is my soundproof room. This is called a pop filter. When we speak, and it's a high quality recording, anytime we say P.
Sorry, I don't know that one.
Alexa, quiet. Anytime we say P, we kind of spit a little bit and make a sound.
Yeah.
This pop filter muffles that. My soundproof room, I came up, it was my own idea. In the class that I took, they wanted me to get an umbrella and put it behind my computer with quilts and heavy blankets over it to make it a soundproof room right in front of my computer. I did that for the first chapter, maybe 2, but every time the dog would run outside, I'd hear the doggy door. So I had to eliminate that. So this is a professional quality soundproofing material. And I thought if I could isolate the microphone, which is this right here, I could do it. And I think it turned out really well. I was real proud. The emotional things, I'd have to record several times. When I had to tell Danielle that she would never see again, I could not do it without crying, so I left it. There's some things in Spanish and some things in Italian. The Italian part, I asked my, hold on. Sorry. Where was I?
You were talking about the Italian and Mexican part.
Oh, Danielle's Aunt Flora and Uncle Albert helped me with Italian. It's very short. It was a part where Danielle's grandmother said to Danielle's mom, "Non me pare che la bambina possa sentire." I don't think the little girl can hear. So I said it in the book in English and Italian. Then I have about my great-grandmother who only spoke Spanish. But then after I'd say it in Spanish, I'd repeat what I just said in English. So the Audible process is run by Amazon. And then Audible has ACX, which is the technical part of your recording. So each chapter has to be recorded and edited because the parameters on Audible are such that you can't be too loud and you can't be too soft. Took a long time. It took over 4 months to record and then probably another 2 or 3 months to edit.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I hear, when I listen to the Audible book now, a click, or when the spring on this, my mic stand, I bump it accidentally, I could hear that. But I know what I'm listening for.
Do you know what you're hearing for? Yeah.
So,
what was the one thing you edited out of your book that you wish you could have kept in?
The story that I began, the first story, or maybe the second story, when I talked about Danielle's mom and the trip to San Francisco, and when she got the blood transfusion, there's a beautiful, maybe 3 or 4 chapters that were really beautiful, and I can describe the scenery from going on train from Scotia, California to San Francisco, but I had to not delete it, but put that
Edit it out.
Story, and then I had to start where I started when Danielle's about 2.5. Okay.
What's the most surprising thing you learned about creating your book?
Surprising. It's how difficult it was. By watching other talks, I know that many of the authors are afraid to do the Audible part. They pay for it, and I know it's not cheap. I know when I did my research, it's easily $4,000 to $5,000, maybe $6,000, depending on how long your book is. Oh, a standard book is about 80,000 words, which my book is. And so when you pay for things like that, you're paying by word count.
By word count, okay. Do you have any suggestions to those who are looking to think about how to become a better writer?
Join writing classes, which I did several. When you have something that you've written and you think it's done well, then you hand it to your friends who you trust. I have a friend who was a legal secretary, because we could make the same mistake over and over and over. Get all the eyes on the project that you can, because they'll give you suggestions. I had a suggestion by a family member, Danielle's hearing tests, Danielle's cochlear implant. They wanted to know the details on how it was done, how they work, And I thought maybe some people would find that kind of a boring part, but if a mom had a deaf child and read this book, she'd know pretty much what I had to go through to get a cochlear implant for Danielle.
Okay. All right. Do you ever hear from your readers much?
Because we're such a small town, quite a bit.
What size is the town you live in?
2,700 people.
Okay.
Could be 3,200. Sometimes I read different things. Danielle is related to most of the Italians in town. And if it's not blood, it's by marriage.
Mm-hmm.
So most of them are proud that I wrote Danielle's book. Danielle's first cousin, who's the only one that's close to me and alive, he thought, yeah, you need to write her story. His mother is 90 years old, and she's one of my great friends. And his uncle is, I believe, 99. I'd have to do the count. Yeah, he's 99.
So what's the quirkiest thing, though, you've heard someone say?
That Danielle, she sure was a wild girl.
Okay. All right. Have you Googled yourself?
I have, but I get a bunch of other people with my name. And since I published the book, that's the main thing that comes up. 40 years in love and loyalty to a beautiful deaf woman.
What makes a good story?
If I can draw the emotion out of someone, make them laugh or make them cry, but something that makes a good story. Could be a boring story, but if I could get them involved when I'm telling them something, I got them.
Okay, that makes sense. What's your favorite book series?
I got it right here.
Clan of the Cape Bear. Yep. Jane O. Yep.
I love the way she writes. I think she does years and years and years and travels and travels and travels before she writes one book. She knows what she's talking about. I believe she could be an herbalist. I honestly do.
Yeah. What's your favorite underappreciated book?
Underappreciated book. When I was young, I read I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings.
Yep.
And it brought lots of emotion. And I think it was read quite a bit at the time, but I think it should be something that's a classic.
It is. In many libraries, that is a classic, and more people are reading it, just so you know.
I love that. I love that. I highly recommend it.
What's the first book that made you cry?
Not sure about that one. I Think That the Blue Dolphins really had me. Had me from hello.
Uh-huh.
I have read books that made me cry.
I jokingly say I take medication not to cry.
Huh?
I take medication not to cry.
My grandmother was a crier. She was a huge part of my life growing up. My mom worked all the time. My dad worked. So I was with my grandmother 90% of my childhood. And so that's why a lot of what I hear in raising my children, grandchildren, is my grandmother. And she was a crier. And I am a crier, but so was Danielle.
Okay.
Pardon me.
What was the first, now, was this the first book you wrote ever, or did you write something else?
No. Have it right here. Can you see that? Oh, it's shiny.
Little bit. I see the silken cord.
The silken cord. It was written for children. It's it's about marriage and how we're given this marriage, and there's two sets of swans. Its setting is Chinese, and one set of both swan sets are set free from their emperor, from the emperor, and one set of swans loves their cord and decorates it and brings it to fruition. But the other set despise the cord, and they eventually, because they fight all the time, fall to their death, and kind of for kids.
Okay. Okay. What do you like to do when you're not writing?
Grandpa, I like to do grandpa. I like
Be a
to go to
grandpa?
mass.
You like to
Huh?
be a grandpa?
Yeah, 4 grandkids. I go to mass every day if I can. I'll go to mass on TV if they don't have it in person because of COVID. I do roses. I'm in the yard. I still have one of Danielle's hearing dogs, China. She's sitting in the corner. She's now, she'll be 10 in January. And then I like to walk. Try and stay involved with the community best I can. Stuff like that.
Would you mind reading a small passage from your book?
I'll give you the setting. My daughter got married in June. And in February, before that wedding, her beloved grandmother died. All my children, my mother-in-law was their second mom because Danielle couldn't really read to them. So grandma read all the time. And if they had to go somewhere, she'd go with Danielle. She taught them how to cook, and they loved her deeply. I'm gonna start, it's only about maybe a page. The stout draft horse came to a halt under the huge redwood gazebo. I jumped out and helped Joy exit the carriage. Joy is my daughter. I looked about the venue. It was a large grove of magnificent redwood trees. Toward the front of this open area was a low stage made from concrete and large river rock. I looked to the stage and saw the beaming Paul and his groommen waiting. I checked out the bride from head to toe and adjusted this and a little bit of that, and she reached for my elbow as we stood about 50 feet from where Paul and his 5 groomsmen were standing. The ceremony went flawlessly, and our beautiful daughter and new son-in-law were now wed. One beautiful, strange thing happened. Right in the middle of the ring exchange, a huge yellow swallowtail butterfly fluttered all around the seated guests and eventually came to land on the shoulder of the bride. Everyone gathered there gasped out loud. Elise, standing near her sister, the bride, uttered loud enough for most of us to hear. Looks like our grandma came to enjoy the wedding too. It took me a few seconds, but I signed into Danielle's hands that a beautiful yellow swallowtail butterfly had just landed on Joy's shoulder. A butterfly? Danielle asked quietly. Yes, I signed back, a yellow one. That's my mom, Danielle signed.
Thank you. So do you feel your family supports you in your writing?
At first, I was faced with opposition because, and it's true, it's too personal for them. So I had to figure out a way to make it rather impersonal, but still tell the story. So I felt I needed to change their names. So once I had their characters' new names, and some of the characters in the book there's one character who I had to change his wife's name because it was kind of about mental stuff. And so I felt I should change her name and give her anonymity. And that's what I did with my children. I gave them all their anonymity. And in Danielle's life down at Berkeley, I changed a few of the characters' names that were a little too personal. And that's what I did. I just changed names.
Well, for those of you who don't know, Jack Saffell is actually my father. I am Elise in the book. I am the eldest daughter, Desiree. I was my mother's interpreter when she was hearing up until I went away to college at 17. And hi, Pa. So for those of you, like I said, who don't know, I have yet to actually completely read the book. I read bits and pieces of it. I do own it on Audible to listen when, God forbid, my father passed, but it is very emotional for me. So it's something that I will listen to later, but I do think
You cry on the part that I read, did you?
a little, but I'm getting better with my acting as I get older. But we wanted to show you some pictures of Mom when she was younger, Berkeley School, CR, etc., just so you can see a little bit about her life. So let me just bring that up, and we'll take a look at that really quick.
I'd like to add that Desiree resembles my mother quite a bit. She has the Italian coloring, but she's, everyone who knows my mom and who knows Desiree says, my gosh, they even act the same.
Yep, absolutely. For those of you who do have questions, you're welcome to, sorry about that.
Anytime.
You're welcome to put them in the chat box at the very bottom of your screen. You will see a chat box to be able to start asking questions if you do have some that popped up for you. I'm going to start going through the PowerPoint, and Papa, do you mind just kind of explaining a few things? First of all, the picture here with this rose, do you want to explain what that is real quick?
We had a rose show about 2 weeks ago at Redwood Acres in Eureka, and I got first place for the show. Very small show, and it's one of my favorite roses.
What's it called?
Called Patty Stevens.
Patty Stevens. Okay. So let me move some of these things here. This is the town that Danielle grew up in. Whoops, sorry. It's, as you can see, a very small, literally, I think there's maybe two red lights to stop at.
No, at that time, we had no red lights.
No red lights? Okay. Grandpa was a barber, and he had his shop there in Riodale. So I'll go on to the next screen. But this was a picture of it during the 50s. This is Pete and Alice. Pete Silvernagle, Alice Mella. Alice was born and raised in Riodale, the town you just saw. Grandpa Pete's originally from South Dakota, a little town called Trail City. And he came out during World War II. He was in the Coast Guard, which was, I understand, part of the Navy then. I always jokingly say he looks a bit like Bob Hope. And then you could see Grandpa Pete working to cut hair.
I always thought Grandma looked like Loretta Young.
Yeah, I can see that. They married in 1943 during the war. Grandpa worked at Salatti's barbershop in Eureka for a while. I know he worked in Fortuna, which is another small town, but he finally owned his own shop in Riodale and was very well known by the people in the town as Pete the Barber.
Oh, you're Pete's son-in-law?
Yep.
All the time.
Exactly. Next is a picture of Mom, Danielle. She was born in 1956. And this is a picture with her Italian grandma, her nonna, Emma Mella, her maternal grandmother. And this is a picture of Danielle at about age 5 in March of '61. Next is the Marshall Elementary School, which is where the mean teacher that used to slap her because whatever reason. Worked at the elementary school. This is actually a Washington school in Eureka, but it's a very similar setup as the school. Danielle, how old was she when she had to go down to Berkeley?
11.
She was 11 years old. So a year younger than the picture you see of her over here on the right, I guess, left-hand side. She attended Berkeley School for the Deaf, which is about 250 miles away. I do understand that Pete and Alice made a point of trying to get down there as much as possible.
Every 3 weeks, Drama would go.
Yep, she would drive down to try to visit.
Took 8 hours to get down there.
Yep. Yep. So they were very much attempted to be part of their lives as much as possible. This is where Jack and Danielle met, my parents, at CR, College of the Redwoods. It's a junior college.
Yep.
Now, what were you studying? Was it just your basics or?
Forestry.
Forestry. And what was mom going to school for?
Definitely like to learn, because she had probably like a 6th or 7th grade education going through the deaf school, so she needed to learn quite a bit more.
Okay.
So it's just for education.
The general education. Now, could you briefly, how did you meet?
We were in drama class together, and kind of little backstory. When I was a little boy, I asked my grandmother, how will I know who I'm going to marry? Because I wanted to be married. And she said, hijo, when you see the girl that God has picked for you to marry, your heart will skip a beat. And so I had girlfriends before your mom, but no heart skipping. But when I saw Danielle walk through the door of the classroom to our drama class, my heart skipped a beat and I caught my breath. I think my heart stopped. So I asked her to go roller skating with me, and she smiled and turned and walked away. So my heart was broken. But I asked her out the next week. When I found out she couldn't hear, and I wrote it on a paper, then she said, I back to my mom.
You have to ask your mom. Yeah. Yeah, when Grandpa and Grandma, I understand, when they first saw my dad, were concerned because he looked very much like a hippie. So I thought that was funny. However,
there it is. That's the hippie.
There's the hippie. They got married May 17th, 1976 in Humboldt County, California. Their wedding reception was at OH's townhouse in Eureka. Apparently, some friends of theirs at the college made them leis the friends were from Hawaii, and got flowers from around the area, which I thought was always that's very cool to hear. Next is me. That is me as a baby. As a small baby and child, I was born 3 days before Christmas. I actually came home in a stocking, I understand. And I was the Christmas gift that year, and I have been trying to live up to that ever since. But it was, so I am the eldest child of 4. There's a total of 4 of us. Like I said, I was my mother's interpreter whenever she needed it. And I probably helped sign for her from the age of 5 up to 17. My first language is sign language.
Can I tell a story?
Huh?
Can I tell a story?
Please.
So Desiree was about maybe as old as the middle picture with the bunny. And Grandma had taken her up to the park to go swing on the swings. And so Grandma said, Desiree's facing away because Grandma's pushing her on the swing. Back and forth. So Grandma said, Desiree, we got to get ready to go. So Desiree starts signing behind her, and this means no. So Desiree signed before she spoke.
Yep. Yeah, so that was my favorite book as a child, was actually A Sesame Street with Linda. Linda was the deaf person on Sesame Street.
Linda Beauvais.
And that was the book that I used initially, how to learn sign. And my first sign that I loved was turtle. And then obviously milk, thirsty, etc. Still always hungry to this day. So anyway, the next baby that was born was Bernadette. She's was born in October of '79. We actually have quite a few October babies. Papa is going to be, his birthday's coming up in a few days. Happy birthday, Pa. But Bernadette's 3 years younger than me and is one of my closest friends. And we're sisters. We didn't always get along great, but we do as we've gotten older too. So I just wanted to share that. And do you want to tell the story of what happened when Bernadette was born?
She was born possibly as a preemie, and she had a hard time breathing when she was born. She was, well, actually, she didn't breathe for a long, long time. And there's a long story in there about when she was born and how they thought she was going to die. And then I gave my life to the Lord and asked him to save my baby, and I'd do anything he wanted me to do for him. And the doctor said the fact that she was alive was a miracle, and I never thought doctors would say that.
So there's a lot of interesting things around children that in this book that I think you'll enjoy. So a couple things about Mom. She had an analog hearing aid. You would have to go to an audiologist to have it molded, and so it was specific to each person's ear. Unlike now with the digital hearing aids, which are much clearer, it was quite a process to get this done. The other thing that I remember as a child in the 70s first seeing is the TTY, or the teletypewriter. And how do I explain it? The sound it would make is similar to what you would hear when you hear it's a very similar sound.
A little bit of a microwave sound when you do the buttons.
Yeah, very similar. But this was actually the first way I learned to type, and I find it fascinating that a lot of the shortcuts that if you use Twitter or if you're typing in Messenger, etc., a lot of the shortcuts are actually things that we used back then. The only difference I can see with this teletypewriter is in the middle underneath the phone, there was a little thing that had paper in it so that when you typed, it would come out. And I remember getting,
One of our older TTYs had that feature, but the newer one, the first one was from World War II.
Yes.
It was a big, big thing.
Yes. But I remember getting yelled at as a kid because I thought it was fun to type on it, and it wasn't for fun. It was supposed to be just for, conversations for Mom. So I would get into a lot of trouble for trying to type things up. But that was my first foray into typing, and now I can type really, really, really fast. So anyway, I always thought that was interesting. Also, I learned to read with having closed captioning at the bottom of the TV, which is highly ironic because if you look at how slow they were back then when they were typing on the television, I'm amazed I could match them up. So it was always
a lot of mistakes.
And a lot of mistakes. So this is my next sister, Charisse. She was born in 1986. As we say, she came with Halley's Comet, just like, what's his name?
Samuel Clemens.
Samuel Clemens. So she still lives in Humboldt, I understand. Bernadette still lives in Humboldt. And Javon, he was born in March of '88. He also still lives in Humboldt. I'm the only one who lives in Massachusetts now. Everyone else is still out there. But so eldest of four, me and Bernadette can sign. Charisse can fingerspell, I believe.
Very well, very well.
And Javon, does he fingerspell? I can't remember. No. Okay. So yeah. So that's
the younger siblings would have the older siblings tell mom I want ice cream.
Yeah. And being the fact that one of the things we were very concerned about was protecting mom, We were very particular about the people we brought home because we were afraid of when the deaf talk, there's a certain sound. And the way although she spoke really well, it still was a deaf sound. So we were very particular about the people we would bring home with us to.
That's a very good point, because when Danielle and I met, most people could not understand her speech.
Yep.
But when she would articulate a word wrong, we'd work on it for a long time. And I even talk about that in the book. She said to me, "Why do you make me talk?"
Yeah. Yeah. Because she wanted to sign, and that's what normally happened. So this year was the year 1999. It's one of the few pictures before she became blind with my father. And mind you, I was going to say, when I think of my parents, to this day, this is how I still think of them in my head.
Because Jesus is in the picture.
Yeah, that's it. That's got to be it. My mom's the same age as me now in this picture, 43. And the other thing I want to mention is Pete and Alice passed away 10 years ago, 9 days apart from each other. Grandpa Pete had a stroke. Grandma, I remember her coming home on the phone with her and saying that Grandpa doesn't know who I am anymore, and she passed away that Monday. And then 9 days later, Grandpa passed away. In Spanish, there's a saying about she was coming to get him. She needed him.
I don't know. I can't think of it.
Yeah, but so I thought that was interesting. And then just so you can see what we look like now. I mean, you obviously see me.
Danielle's blind there.
Yes, my mom is blind here in this picture. This was taken, I want to say 2008 or 2009. But you got Bernadette, me, and on the top, and then down below is Therese and Joan. Mom's blind in this picture, and there's Papa. And Mom passed away just a couple days ago. It'll be 5 years, and October 18th. And all right, so any questions for us? Anything that you would like answered?
The only bad question is the unanswered question.
Exactly. So if you have any questions,
unasked question. I got that back.
So if anyone has any questions for us,
confused.
Yeah,
I'm confused.
Yeah, I always go confused. So is there any questions for us? We would love to answer them if you have something.
Please.
If not, my father, so in the book, there's a part where my father signed to my mother at the wedding reception. And it was something he also did at her funeral. And do you want to explain why?
That from the book,
Huh?
Nobody knows that from the book. That was too personal. I didn't put that in the book.
Okay, well, so surprise, he also did it at the funeral. But it was which is written, it's their wedding song. So, any questions before we start this? Once the song's over, I was going to end the recording. But I want to thank you, everyone who attended. I hope you enjoyed this book talk. And I look forward. Excuse me?
Somebody's raising their hand. Was that? Are
Okay.
They clapping?
Oh, they're saying good job. Thank you.
Wait for the song.
Yeah, so wait for the song. You will, let's see, why am I not seeing any? So I hope you enjoy this. If you want to see the end, towards the end of the song, we'll be done after that. But I think you'll enjoy the signing that we'll be able to see. All right. Thank you all. Love you, Pa, by the way. And go ahead when you're ready.
everybody see me and hear me?
Yep.
Can you hear my music?
Yes.
Here we go.
When I'm gray, will you stay by my side till darkness comes over my eyes? And when I'm sick, will you lift my wounds over and feed me with your loving smile? Or will you still love me tomorrow? Or will you be changing your mind? Will you deceive me? Or will you believe that I'm loving you all the time? If I should die just before I awaken, will I see the light shine in your eyes? Have no fear, please, I'll be near when you need me to feed you with love all the while. Oh, will you still love me tomorrow? Or will you be changing your mind? Will you deceive me? Or will you believe that I'm loving you all of the time?
So last thing, if someone would like to purchase this book, where can you get it? Besides the library? Amazon? Okay. And it would be under JC Saffell?
Audible, a Kindle, and paperback. I almost said hard copy, paperback.
Paperback. Okay. Well, thank you everyone for attending. I appreciate it. I hope you had a good time. I hope you learned a little bit more. And my father's just interpreting what I'm saying into sign language. So I hope you have a great weekend. I hope it's nice and warm where you are. And I hope to see you again. Bye, friends.